This is the Rebel Author Podcast, where we talk about books, business, and occasionally bad words. Hello, Rebels, and welcome to episode 119 of the Rebel Author Podcast. It is January. It is 2022. Thank the many and varied gods. I think we are all rather pleased to see the back of 2020 and 2021, and I'm sure we are all creeping very quietly, very modestly, very humbly into 2022, hoping and praying to whoever we do that to that this year is better. Today, I'm talking to Ricardo Fayet all about how to market a book in 2022. I loved this episode. I think Ricardo is an absolute master of advertising, so I hope you find some very useful things in the episode. There was no question last week because we had no introduction. However, this week's question is, what is your word for 2022? Now, what do I mean by a word? Well, every year I kind of give myself a phrase or a word that symbolises what I want from the year. I think last year was content production... Finishing shit. It was finishing shit. My biggest word was finishing shit. And although I didn't really do that the first half of the year, I certainly did by the end of the year. I definitely spent most of the last 6 months of the year going, oh yeah, I opened too many tabs and now I need to shut them all down. And that's kind of spilling over into 2022. I've got the anthology to finish and Trey and Sirens to publish, but they are all very close to publication now. So I'm feeling considerably better and very excited for what 2022 will bring me. But that was last year. This year, my word is growth. I mean, I kind of have three, which is production, growth, and publishing. But the real, I guess the heart of that is the word growth. And why have I chosen growth? Well, I've chosen growth because I would like to grow in craft. I would like to grow my backlist. I would like to grow my income. I would like to grow my knowledge. I would like to grow as a human. I would like to, there are just like so many different ways in which I want to grow. And so that is why next year my word is growth. And I would love to know what your word for 2022 is. Or maybe if you don't have a word, you can tell me that too. Okay, so the book recommendation of the week this week is a Spindle, Splintered by Alix E. Harrow. Now, I believe I recommended The 10,000 Doors of January earlier in the year, which was also by Alix E. Harrow, and possibly her short story, which was in an Apex magazine, which won some award or other, which was fantastic. I absolutely adore Alix's writing. There is just something so rich and captivating, and it's not purple and it doesn't waffle, so I just really enjoy reading her work. Now, A Spindle Splintered is very short. I think it's only about 130 pages, and it's a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, set in the modern day. It's kind of based on the multiverse, and there is a lot of LGBT rep in there as well. It was like this fantastic feminist short story that I just devoured, and I really recommend, really recommend it. I thought it was fantastic. Lots of fantasy elements, of course. All right, so personal update. Well, I had Christmas. It is actually the 31st of January, so I'm doing this on New Year's Eve because I'm cool like that. No, the reason I'm doing it on New Year's Eve is because Sasha thought she had done enough episodes to get me through to the first week of January, and in my exhaustion-addled brain pre-Christmas, I miscalculated because we all know numbers aren't my thing, and so I needed enough to get me to this week. So here I am on New Year's Eve. It's like 8:20 at night, and I'm doing this podcast. What a way to end the year. I hope you all had a lovely festive period, or if you don't celebrate Christmas, then you just had a lovely December. I love New Year's. I don't love it for like the parties or the fireworks or anything like that, although, you know, those things are great too. I love it because I love the energy, the starting energy, the fresh, the newness, the potential that a new year has. And so I always get very excited every New Year. And I know most people don't really enjoy a New Year, but for me it's one of the best times. I love January. So yeah, I'm very excited to see in the new year. I haven't done any work since I stopped, and I think my last day was the 22nd. No, the 21st of December. I'm not sure. Yeah, so I think I've had about 10 days off now. A big chunk of that was traveling here, there, and everywhere, visiting friends and family. We saw loads of family, and it was wonderful. I have really, really enjoyed being off. I didn't realise how much I needed it. That said, my wife now has COVID. Not so good. And so we formally got her result today. Her PCR, and so she has been isolating in our bedroom because it has an ensuite, so we're very lucky and privileged to have that. So she is able to just stay in that room, and thus far myself and the kiddo have avoided getting COVID. Our PCRs came back negative, so we are okay at the moment. We're just hoping, obviously, you know, these things can take some time to develop, but we're hoping. We've had a couple of days now where Chloe's had it and we haven't, so I'm keeping everything crossed that we don't get it. Anyway, so I'm trying to think what else. My first week back next week is going to be a little bit bumpy and rocky now because I'm sort of doing that solo parenting thing, and so it will be all back to school and here, there and everywhere. I will be catching up. I am going to do things differently in January, so I have blocked out a couple of weeks to work on my next craft book. And I won't do anything else in those 2 weeks. And then I will do admin and podcasting and all the rest of it in and around that in the weeks before and after. So yeah, the first week of January is just going to be a bit of a catch-up planning type week for me. And I am really excited for January. I kind of am gunning for starting the work, like starting drafting. It feels like I haven't written words for ages now, but I need that. And this is one of the things that I'm going to be doing differently in 2022. I am going to be doing what I like to call the Phoenix burn. So I don't know if you will remember, but in November, I gave myself a monstrous task, edited all of the words, wrote all of the words, and I did that in a very short space of time. And I found that to be far more productive than trying to be consistent and doing words every day. So yeah, I'm going to be setting myself tight deadlines where I have to do nothing but that one project, and seeing if that helps me produce more. So yes, I am going to be doing that in January, and then we'll see where I get to, because by the time I've done those 2 weeks, I will also have feedback back on tray, and so I want to be handing that off to the editor alongside the anthology in January. So it's going to be a bit of a busy month for me. But yes, okay, so I think that's probably it. I was gonna do a whole episode on like goals and things, but like, you know me, I have like 38 or something ridiculous. Not all of them big, some of them are really small. But yeah, I think I will possibly not. With all of the stuff going on at home, I'm just like, my brain is gone. So yes, okay, where are we now? Okay, so Rebel of the Week this week is Rowan James. Rowan said, "So I found out that I am trans back in 2018 and have been hiding it up until 2020. Finally, in a new apartment and with my fiance, I decided to get started with hormones. As I was within a few weeks of getting started, I realised I haven't even come out yet. I'm a rather private person and don't even post pictures of myself or my kids. So my first thought was, I'm going to write a book to come out. If I'm going to come out, I might as well go all the way. So I wrote a poetry book about my experience coming to terms with being transgender. Although it wasn't well received by my family, I've had people reach out and tell me how helpful it's been in their own lives for coming to terms with themselves and their own LGBTQ kids. Oh, I love that. I love that this is a story where like you've gone through your own developments and changes, and then you've been able to give back, and that has like helped other people as well. There is no better rebellion than a rebellion that has positive consequences for other people. And what a lovely way to start 2022 as well. Okay, so a couple of new patrons over the Xmas period. Welcome to Jessica Smith and Jessica A. McMinn. Lots of Jessicas. Welcome to all of the Jessicas. You are more than welcome into the community. I love having you here. A huge thank you for the support. It really, really means everything to me. And it encourages me to keep going as well. A big thank you to all my existing patrons. Love you guys. You're amazing. And if anybody else would like to join me and get early access to all of the episodes, as well as bonus content and joining me for sessions like Poison and Prose, then you can from as little as $2 a month by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. This week's episode is sponsored by Pro Writing Aid. So rather than hear me talk about why Pro Writing Aid are awesome, and trust me, they really are, I'm going to hand you over to one of my amazing patrons, Lynn Fiona. Lynn, take it away.
Pro Writing Aid isn't just for your manuscript. Don't get me wrong, it's great for that, but it's also for your website content, your newsletter, and your social media posts. You can copy and paste any text into the web editor or use one of its many software integrations so you can edit anything and everything you ever type. Because let's face it, you can't really copy edit your own work. You miss something. And I, for one, am fed up of crafting my messaging, hitting tweet, and immediately spotting the typo. There's nothing left to do then but curse the Twitter gods for not giving us an edit button. Pro Writing Aid is an editing tool for formal reports to Instagram posts. Not only does it help with catching those annoying typos, but it flags when I've slipped into using passive voice, and it suggests fixes and explains the problem, so that I can learn for the future and write better content.
Okay, that's enough from me for today. Let's get on with the interview. Hello and welcome to the Rebel Author podcast. Today, I am joined by Ricardo Fayet. Ricardo is one of the 4 founders of Readsy, a marketplace connecting authors to the world's top publishing talent. From editors to cover designers, book marketers, or literary translators. He is the author of several Readsy learning courses on marketing and a regular presenter at several prestigious writers' conferences, including NINC, RWA Australia, 20 books to 50k, and the Self-Publishing Show Live, where I saw you speak as well, actually, among others. He recently released his first book with the unimaginative title of, I hate saying that, that's so mean, How to Market a Book, Overperform in a Crowded Market. Hello and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And yeah, it is sadly true. It is a very unimaginative title.
But like SEO points and like searchability and findability points. So, you know, sometimes we have to have these less imaginative titles. So thank you so much. Like, would you like to tell everyone a little bit about your journey, or like how you got to where you are today? Yeah, all that good stuff.
For sure. So I think I started in the publishing industry when I started Readsy, which was around 7 years ago, I think now.
Oh my God, 7 years.
Yeah, I know.
Why do I feel so old? I remember Readsy starting.
Well, I remember Drafted Digital starting, and that was 10 years ago. They're turning 10 this year. So yeah, that put things into perspective. But it's nice. I mean, it's great that companies like us have been able to be around for that long. So yeah, we started in 2014, 2015. And I mean, the core idea of Readsy was still the same as it is now, which is a marketplace to connect authors and publishers with what we like to call the world's top publishing talent. So very carefully vetted network of editors, cover designers, proofreaders, book marketers, ghostwriters, author website designers, and we added last year literary translators as well. So pretty much anyone you need to hire at any point, yeah.
And let's just, because obviously the audience is writers and indies mostly, just talk me through the vetting, because obviously you are ensuring that they are kind of trusted, approved.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that look like? What do you mean vetted?
Yeah, so we mean vetted, like we accept less than 3% of professionals who apply to be listed on Readsy and who create a profile. And the curation process is pretty simple. We get them to fill in a profile, a little bit like you'd fill in a LinkedIn profile, you know, or your author profile on Author Central. We ask them to list all their work experience and all of the books that they've worked on as a professional, whether it's as an editor, designer, etc. Then we review that manually. So there's no algorithms or anything like that. It's actual human beings going through the profiles, double checking that, you know, the information that they've put in there is true, and then assessing whether they meet our criteria. Usually for editing, that's like experience having edited at least 10 or 15 books, usually at a traditional publishing house. I'd say that the vast majority of our editing profiles come from the big five. So people who used to be employed at the big five or at a famous literary agency and then going freelance or freelancing on the sides. For cover designers, it's more of a mix. But yeah, it's a case-by-case vetting process that also depends on the type of professional. For book marketers, for example, I interview them myself as a last step in the vetting process, because we have a lot of marketers that come from traditional publishing, but they might not be suited to working with indie authors because it's a different skill set. So I always like to have this final chat with them.
That is amazing. I did not realize it was as intensive. I knew you vetted, but I didn't realize it was quite that level of vetting. That is phenomenal. Okay, well, we are here to talk about marketing because you are a marketing master. Oh my goodness, there's all these notifications and I don't know why, because I've turned them all off. Let me just make a note that I need to. I don't know how my phone's making noise. My phone's always on silent. Note to self. Right. Let me just make a note in the notes that I need to edit this.
I'm doing the same thing on my side. I'm shutting
off
everything.
I don't know why that happened. Everything's, I think I'm even on like focus mode. Anyway, right. Where am I? Okay, so we are here to talk about marketing because you are a phenomenal marketer. And so I would like to start by asking you, what do you think are the most important mindset points around, or mindset principles around marketing, but like specifically for indie authors?
Yeah, I think the first two would be like resilience and patience, and they go together a little bit. Like I think a lot of authors, they want to pull the gun a little bit too quickly. You know, they got that first book out and it has to sell. It has to be an instant bestseller. And you know, when they release the book and it doesn't sell, they get discouraged very fast. Or they release that first series and that first series doesn't do well, and they say, okay, that's not for me, so I'm gonna drop it now. And I think most of the authors I know who've become successful, they've done so after several books and several series. Often, it's really hard to predict in the publishing world when a book or a series is going to be successful. Otherwise, you know, everyone would be a successful publisher. But yeah, publishing houses have a really hard time, and literary agents have a really hard time finding books that they know are going to be instant bestsellers. So even if you're an amazing author, it might take you several books and several series to get to that series that just takes off on its own. And there are still series for which that happens, where you do very little marketing and still takes off. So there's really that patience and that resilience element, where even if things don't go well, you just keep writing books, keep putting books out there, and at some point you'll have one book or one series that's going to outperform the others, just because it's going to resonate more with its audience. And the other important mindset element is when you're actually at the marketing stage, is thinking like a reader. And I talk about this quite a bit in the book, because I think a lot of authors are scared of marketing, or they say marketing is not something I want to do, because they see marketing as a sales process, as a salesman going door by door and saying, here's my book, buy my book, buy my book. And authors are mostly introverts, and even those who are extroverts, I think no one wants to be a salesman nowadays. And in truth, marketing is kind of the opposite of that. It's making your book visible so that readers come across it naturally and want to buy it. So it's not about you going out there, it's about readers finding you. And in order for that to happen, you need to, you know, put your reading hat on and think like, okay, as a reader, how do I find the kind of books that I write? I presumably, as a reader, as an author, read the same kind of books that I write. So I'm already, you know, it's just a simple change of mindset. How do I find my books? Is it through friends' recommendations? Is it through Goodreads? Is it through like ads that I come across on Facebook? Is it through BookBub newsletters? And based on where I find my books, I can try to position my books that I authored in those places so that readers like me are going to come across them naturally.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I almost exclusively find mine on Instagram.
Interesting.
I like literally almost exclusively as well. And I think the only other place I find them is when I found one on Instagram, I go to Amazon and then I will look at the also broughts.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's the only other place.
That's perfect.
Yeah. But
so
that's not
are your
obviously
books on Instagram?
So I'm changing genre into next year. So yeah, I mean, I haven't done a huge amount with my fiction. I have spent most of my early career dealing with my nonfiction, but
Right.
next year I'm moving much more into fiction. So I've just finished a trilogy with 4 novels.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah.
A quadrilogy.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a trilogy with a small novella on the end.
Okay.
And then next year, but I'm going into, not a completely different genre, but more niche, just slightly to the left. So yeah, I kind of feel like I'm starting again next year. So it will be a bit of anyway, but yes, I will be on Instagram for sure.
Nice.
And even more so now you said it. Okay. So I have a lot of listeners who are going to publish or have just or are about to publish their first book. So what are like the top 3 things that everybody should do to market their book or books?
Right. I think the number one thing is getting the positioning of the book right on all the retailers where you're going to publish it. And by that, I mean knowing your target audience, knowing the kind of reader who you want to pick up your book, understanding how they search for books on those stores. So for example, if you're going to be exclusive to Amazon because you know that most other authors who do well in your genre are exclusive, then you're going to have to do a deep dive research into Amazon. What categories do they list their books in? What do their blurbs look like? Are they written first person, third person? Is the hook
yes, for listeners, I'm writing things down.
That's great. The hook, I think for the blurb, I always like analyzing what kind of hooks authors are using out there, whether it's social validation or it's character driven or it's plot driven. Like what sort of stuff are other successful authors in my genre using in their blurbs to draw readers in? Obviously the covers, what kind of covers are prevalent? How can I play along the same genre tropes that are doing well, but at the same time maybe trying my own twist on them so that they stand out in search and in lists. Doing this kind of market research. And if you're not going to be exclusive, you're going to be on multiple retailers, do this on every retailer. I think a lot of authors don't spend enough time, just browsing through Apple Books, browsing through the Kobo store and seeing how their genre is represented and displayed on those different stores and how readers are likely to find books on those different stores. So do a bit of again, put your reader hat on and think, how would I try to find books in my genre on those different stores?
Yeah, I think that is fantastic advice. And funnily enough, I was talking on another podcast earlier on today about how little I think we often understand about our genre and how actually just going into more granular detail, it's unbelievable. One, how many ideas you can get, and two, like how much better you can place your like books. Yeah. Okay. What do you think is essential in terms of marketing before you publish? So what kind of marketing should an author be doing before they hit publish?
Yeah. So if you understand your genre well, because I think that's still number one, and you've got great companies like Klytics that do reports that can, help you a lot with that. So I definitely recommend you check those reports out. But provided you've got a good understanding of your market, in terms of pre-launch marketing, I have to mention the mailing list, with the caveat that you might not need a mailing list. You're just going to put one book out there. If you're going to release more books, if you're going to try to build an author brand and a career out of writing books, then you're going to want a mailing list. And the sooner you set it up, the better. One of the best ways to grow a mailing list before you release your first book is to release a first book, so a little novella or something like that. You put on BookFunnel or Story Origin, and you give away for free in exchange for signups, or reader magnet. Basically, doesn't have to be a whole novella. It can be virtual prequel scene. Artwork sometimes, but when you haven't released anything out there, generally a short book is going to be what's going to work best, especially for fiction. For nonfiction, you've got a ton of other opportunities, courses, videos, etc. So I'd say the mailing list, knowing your market, potentially setting up an author website, but I think we're moving into the realm of things that would be a nice to have rather than a must have. So if you have the money to spare on an author website, or the skills to invest into building one, definitely do it. It's going to give your launch a more professional edge when readers are going to check out that book and see that, okay, you have a website, so you're taking this seriously. But barring that, probably the most helpful thing you can do is network. I know a lot of authors who had successful first launches because they'd been going to writing conferences several years before as aspiring authors. A lot of conferences are open to aspiring authors. 20 Books Madrid, 20 Books Vegas are open to first-time to aspiring authors. Even London Book Fair, when they have a little section for authors. So you can go to a bunch of places that are for aspiring authors. And the best thing you can do there is network. Network with other aspiring authors in your genre. Network, if you can, with other successful authors or somewhat established authors in your genre, and make friends. Make friends with them. And naturally, when you're going to release that first book, these other authors are going to help you out. And there's nothing more powerful than word of mouth from a fellow author who's already established. But obviously, that can only happen if you've made friends with them, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree. My career has always taken like a jump after a conference, and I can't really pinpoint why, other than I think more people, therefore more opportunities arise
Yep.
Afterwards. Let's say an author's on a limited budget. What would be the top priority in terms of spend, other than book cover and edit? Like in terms of marketing spend or promotion spend, where is their money best placed?
That's a good question. I think generally one of the principles outlined in the book is that you don't want to spread your energy. And for me, energy is the same as money. Like either you have a ton of money or you have a lot of time to invest. So it goes somewhat together. You don't want to spread it across too many channels. You don't want to, try to be on Instagram because you find your books on Instagram, but at the same time, you've heard really good things about Facebook ads, so you're going to run Facebook ads, but at the same time, your books are exclusive to Amazon, so you have to run Amazon ads. And, price promos are really important. So you're going to run a price promo during the first week. And I'm forgetting the mailing list that I have to set up. You're already either you manage to achieve all those things that you burn out after a couple of weeks, or you half-ass them basically, and you don't have a real presence on Instagram. Your ads on Facebook are bad, and don't draw any clicks in. et cetera, et cetera. So pick one or two channels, and that's where you invest either your time or your money, depending on the channel and what you have at your disposal. I personally quite like ads, so I tend to invest most of my money to promote my book into advertising, because I don't have a lot of extra time to promote this book. So, I just set up some Amazon ads and I'm done. But in other cases, if you're really good on social media, then set up that Instagram profile, set up that TikTok profile. TikTok's really hot right now for actually organic visibility. So if you like TikTok, spend your time in there.
Mostly romance though, like sort of the steamier romance end. I'm seeing a lot of steamy romance, and then occasionally the odd trad book has gone viral. But I'm not seeing a lot for like other genres on TikTok. I don't know if you are, but I'm mostly seeing steamy romance on there.
I think TikTok's actually really good algorithms that target the right stuff to what you're interested in, maybe. I know several authors. I know authors in cozy mysteries that are doing relatively well on there.
Oh, really?
And there are quite a few YA books.
That's the other one
that have gone viral.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I believe that you can go viral on any social medium. It might be a little bit easier on TikTok right now because it's newer. But I also believe that you need to be really comfortable and enjoy doing it. Because if you see social media as a drag or as something that saps your time, or you just don't enjoy it, you're never going to have a positive presence on there or genuine presence. And that's just never going to attract people. You got to genuinely enjoy spending time on that social medium if you're going to succeed at it.
Yeah, completely agree. Okay, so obviously you run a lot of ads. So what do your better ads look like, or what did your best ad look like, and like why was it successful? What are the key features of a really successful ad?
Are we talking Facebook or Amazon or?
One Facebook and one Amazon.
So for Facebook, I think the best ads are those that really resonate with the audience. And that sounds a little bit obvious. But for example, I mean, one example in the fantasy, like there's a lot of epic fantasy. So I run ads for a few epic fantasy authors, and generally I know what kind of stuff is going to appeal to a wide variety of fantasy readers. You put a dragon in there in the image, or if it's a cover that has like obvious epic fantasy element to it, you just put the cover, it can work, etc. But sometimes the most successful things I've had is when I've really tailored the ad to an audience. For example, there was an assassin epic fantasy and targeted Assassin's Creed fans with an image that was immediately going to appeal to them because it was very Assassin's Creed inspired. A tagline that was going to appeal to them, something as simple as like, do you miss Assassin's Creed? Meet my protagonist. Or for fans of Assassin's Creed, whatever. And that got a really, really low CPC very, very quickly, below 10 cents per click. So when you manage to really tailor that messaging and that ad to a very specific audience, it can do wonders. Yeah, that's one strategy. Another one is, you go for a very wide audience and then you iterate over time until you get to something that's low. But if you want that instantly low CPC, you really need to find the right messaging for the right niche audience.
And for Amazon, yeah.
For Amazon, it's more complicated because you don't control anything on the creative side on Amazon. So you only have control over the targeting. And for me, Amazon is a much more analytical and iterative process than Facebook. On Facebook, if you create a great ad to a very well-defined audience and you have that synergy between the two, you can get a great CPC and you can instantly boost your sales. Same for BookBub ads, but I've never really been any good at BookBub ads. But I know authors who have, 15+% CPC on their CTR on their, for their books because they found that perfect image for that perfect audience. But these two advertising platforms, they're very image heavy, whereas Amazon is yeah, you've got, they use the cover, but there's not much customization. There's not much you can do on the creative side. And for me, it's much more analytical. It's about like, obviously finding the right keywords and the right products to target. But then it's a process of like tweaking bids every week or every couple of weeks until you get to that point where the ads are profitable, and then slowly scale your spend. So for me, there's no instant great Amazon ad or great recipe for an Amazon ad. The only recipe is like, again, patience and an analytical mindset.
Yeah, I run lots of nonfiction AMS ads, and I can get them to a certain level so that I know if I spend this, I'll probably make this. I just can't seem to get them to spend anymore. Like, I can't seem to get them to grow other than setting up new ones. So I probably need to go back and do a refresher on Amazon ads, because I am not wildly analytical.
And the problem with Amazon ads is so the idea is you tweak your bid so that you're only spending enough on a click that you're going to make a profit. But then new advertisers keep coming in the game. So if your bids stay the same for several months, it's not that you need to create new campaigns per se. It's that you need to up your bids just because they're not as competitive as they used to be. And so your spend decreases and your impressions and clicks decrease.
I had one ad. I've only ever had one ad go just gangbusters. It just, I don't know what happened, but it exploded. And that one lasted for ages, months and months, maybe even over a year. And I've never been able to replicate it. So I'm like, I just don't have an analytical brain. I kind of like go onto my sales dashboard, check the KDP Amazon ads dashboard, kind of do like, is it doing what it should be? Like, I'm so bad. I really ought to be better. Spreadsheets, but it's like my party trick to break a spreadsheet. So I'm always like afraid to like try and do spreadsheets because I just fuck them up constantly. Anyway. Okay, if an author has a trilogy or a longer series, what would be your approach and kind of launch strategy in terms of like scaling, promotions, like launch? When do you drop? When do you, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think rapid release still works very well. So I would probably do a rapid release strategy, dropping one book a month or one book maybe every 2 months, depending on how you're going to be able to sustain that afterwards. So if it's going to be a longer series and you write one book a year, don't drop the first 3 1 month apart and then tell readers, yeah, by the way, for the fourth one, you're going to have to wait a year. That's not gonna be ideal. But if it's just a 3-4 book series, I'd definitely do a rapid release, 1 month or so apart, or a little bit less, so that you constantly have one book in the opting for the hot new releases. And start building a mailing list before I release book 1, probably. Or if I have one already, start getting them excited about the new series, but not too much. While I release book 1 and maybe book 2, try to build up that list a little bit more and do a big promo when book 3 hits. So drop book 0 at free or $0.99, book 2 at $0.99 or $1.99. So do kind of a ladder promotion going up to book 3, and focus your spend over maybe 1-2 weeks during that promotion to try to get all 3 books as high as possible in their respective lists. And yeah, if you're gonna run ads, run Facebook like carousel ads, BookBub ads going to the series page, especially if book 1 is free and book 2 is at $0.99. They can probably one-click all 3 for $3-4, something like that. And yeah, focus that spend during that 2-week period so that you get the books as high as possible for a good week at least, and then reap the rewards, basically. I think that's an advice that I learned from David Gaughran, and it still works really well for whenever we try to implement it. And one last piece of advice is maybe before you release each book, before each book hits, run some light Amazon ads on the pre-order just to build out the also books. Especially if you're going to do a big promo for book 3 or anything like that. Make sure that the also books are solid before you do you book sites like Free Booksy, Bargain Booksy, etc. that have pretty wide readership, and they can mess up your also books if they're not already well established. So I always like to run some light Amazon ads on the pre-orders to build up the also books, even at a loss, because it's going to be very hard to make a profit on a pre-order through Amazon ads.
What about when you are writing in a really small niche? How do you succeed? How do you target? How do you still turn a profit when you're going into a very small niche?
I think it's easier to market in a very small niche as long as you know what that niche is, and as long as it's a niche that exists. Because you'll know the other authors in your niche, because there's not that many of you can make create some kind of relationship with them a lot easier. For example, build a mailing list, create a list and start promoting their works to your list. That way you're going to try to cultivate a readership in your mailing list that reads in that small niche. You can obviously contact these other authors in your niche and tell them, hey, do you mind if I promote this book, or I do a giveaway of 3 of your paperbacks? So that's a great way to start building a relationship with them. And since it's a small niche that it's much easier to target through Amazon advertising and BookWeb advertising. It might be too small a niche to exist as a Facebook audience, but in most cases you'll find something, or you'll be able to do a compound of interest that manages to reach kind of that audience. And for me, the smaller, not necessarily the smaller, but the more defined the niche, the easier it is to market. Then there's obviously the question of is the niche big enough for me to even make a profit in that niche? But if one or several authors are doing it out there, then you can.
It's given me a bit more faith. Yeah, I suppose if there are already books, and okay, all right. When is the right time to hire out marketing? Obviously you provide services, you run ads on behalf of people. When or why should an author decide to do that rather than trying to do it themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I'm scaling that activity down just to focus on Readsy stuff, but we do have a few marketers on Readsy who run ads on behalf of authors. I think it makes sense to outsource marketing, just like any other activity, when you already know enough about that activity. You've learned about marketing, you found kind of what works with you or what shows promise, and so you hire someone to take it to the next level. So that's when I would hire someone, is you've run Amazon ads and they've shown kind of promise, or that they really work well in your genre and all your author friends are doing them well, but just hate them. So you hire someone to give it a try for you, or take it to the next level for you. I think that's when it makes sense to hire someone. If you're a first-time author and you're going to release your first series, if you listen to this podcast, and checked a few of the resources and the guests that have been invited, you probably don't need to hire a marketer to plan a book launch for you. But if you don't have the time to learn about marketing and all the aspects that we've discussed in this episode, for example, you might want to hire a marketer to put together a launch strategy for you, and a spreadsheet telling you exactly, okay, on this day, you're going to drop the price of the book to $0.99. You're going to book the following price promotion sites that you might not already know about. You're going to run these kind of ads on Facebook to these audiences. Basically, someone to cut the learning curve by a lot, so that you just have to apply what comes in their plan. That's another case scenario where I think it makes sense to hire someone. And final one is like to write your blurb and do your metadata. If you cannot write blurb, or you just, you get blocked when you try to write your blurb, there are people out there copywriters out there who specialize in that. It's going to be maybe, between 200 and 400 bucks. See if that's an expense that you're able to make, or willing to make. It depends on the time you can invest and the money you can invest. But yeah, these are some examples of when I think it makes sense to hire someone. Definitely don't hire someone thinking they're going to do the marketing for me, because no one's going to do that. They might run some part of your marketing. They might run your mailing list. They might run your ads. They might, there are some virtual assistants who are going to do all your marketing for you, so that you can just sit in your chair and write.
Yeah. What are the most common mistakes that you see indie authors making?
Definitely lack of patience and switching from one activity to another. Like you try Amazon ads for a couple of weeks, the campaigns don't seem to work, so you drop it and you try Facebook ads, and then after a couple of weeks it doesn't seem to work, so you drop it and you try BookBub ads or whatever. And most of these strategies and tactics and channels take time to learn. And not only do they take time to learn, but in the case of like Amazon ads, for example, there's kind of a lag in reporting. Like Amazon ads report sales up to 14 days after someone clicks on your ad. So you might log into your dashboard, after a week, not see any sales, but log in after 2 weeks and start seeing a bunch of sales. And obviously that completely changes how you're going to act on these campaigns, where you're going to shut them down or like increase the bids or whatever. So you got to be patient. You got to be patient, accept that there's a learning curve to anything you try, and kind of make a plan, say, okay, for the next X number of months, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to focus on Facebook ads, learning it as much as I can, trying, experimenting, trying to scale, etc. And you can drop it after 2-3 months, you really get zero results. But I think the authors who are successful at marketing, they give themselves several months to try a new tactic, whether that's advertising or like getting a presence on Pinterest or like getting a presence in TikTok. You got to give yourself time for all of that and to really, really test the channel out.
Yeah, and I think you have to be willing to lose a bit of money as well. In that, like you have to be in the game to play the game. And unfortunately, that does mean sometimes, you do need a budget that not only can you spend it, but you can take risks with it. So you don't want to be using like your mortgage money. It's got to be other money that you can do. Okay, so in your book, you give quite a detailed, it's like several sections on like creating an ad, like an overview, like analyzing, improving. And I just wondered if you could give listeners like a bit of an overview on how they should approach creation, like strategy and analysis, and all of that good stuff with advertising.
For sure. I mean, for the creation part is generally what's easiest and most fun to do, because in the case of Facebook and BookBub, there's actually a creation part, like there's creativity involved, and authors are creatives. So you actually have an advantage over other advertisers there. You just got to learn how to create an ad. There are a bunch of tutorials out there, courses, books, etc. You just have to learn what to put in those different boxes, and what kind of images to use, and what kind of audiences to select. So there's definitely a big learning curve there, but I'd say it's fairly intuitive. Where I think most authors struggle is with the analysis part, right? First, for the analysis, my number one recommendation is, again, to be patient. Don't look at your ads every day. I don't think it's necessary. Nothing's going to change majorly from one day to another. And any change that you might see from one day to another does not reflect anything real. So if you average maybe 5 sales a day on Amazon ads and one day you don't get any sales, don't panic and stop all your campaigns because, oh my God, they're not working anymore. Just give it another day. Maybe there's a reporting lag. Maybe you just didn't have any luck this day, and you're going to get 10 sales tomorrow instead. So don't look at your ads every day. And then in terms of like optimizing, there's a lot of, it depends on the platform. But for me, Facebook allows for a lot more testing. So what I generally do on Facebook is I create dynamic ads where I can give Facebook several headlines, several description text, several images or videos. And then I check the performance after, a week, or after I spent $50 or a bit more than that, so that I have like statistically significant data in there. And I can check the performance of each creative. And what I do is like, I don't only keep the good ones, but I identify the ones that have performed the worst, and I either remove them or I replace them with other variations of the ones that performed well. So I kind of iterate, based on what I see has worked. The same thing goes for BookBub. BookBub requires very methodical testing. So what I do for BookBub is I create an image that I think is the best image that I can come up with. And then I target 5 different authors. Then I see which of these authors worked well, and I isolate that author. And then I test 3 different images, just targeting that author. So I do one round of like testing author targets, and then one round of testing images with the author target that performed the best. And you do these 2 kind of tests, and you keep going, basically picking the best each time, so that hopefully you basically zigzag your way to good CTR. And for Amazon, as I said, it's a much more on a, there's not a big creative part. Like setting up an ad is incredibly easy. There's not much you need to do, aside from selecting your targeting. If you create an automatic ad, it can be done in under 1 minute. And a lot of auto ads can work, especially for nonfiction. And so Amazon is a question of like, taking the time to analyze the results with a cool head, and then tweaking bits. But it's a lot more analytical work using the data that's in the dashboard, and that's really hard to sum up here.
I completely agree. Okay, are there any things that an author should plan for or consider in terms of like post-launching? So 2 months out, 6 months out, are there things that they should be doing? Do they need to like cycle ads, or like do they stop? Do they just continue? In terms of the longer term prospects of a book and a series, what should authors be doing?
I think definitely continue what's working well. Also knowing that some channels can work better in the long term than others. For me, Amazon advertising in particular is great in the long term, because as you said, it's difficult to get Amazon to spend your money when it goes well. So it can provide that nice little trickle of sales, these 5-10 sales a day that, it sums up at the end of the month. Whereas Facebook and BookBub, they rely on audiences that have a given size, and you kind of exhaust those audiences at some point, or like run into creative fatigue, so your CPC goes up or your sales go down. So they're better for like short bursts. So once you're in after a few months, you might want to get Amazon ads to provide that trickle of sales. And then what I like to do is run a promo every once in a while. Promos are still the best thing to revive your backlist, and the easiest things. If you're in KDP Select, make sure you take advantage of those promos every 90 days. Run one every 90 days. If you get offered, Kindle Daily or monthly deals on a series that's not performing super well, take advantage of them, and then run ads when the books are discounted. And other than that, I'd say think about other formats and other ways you can exploit your IP. Audio is a simple example. Box sets as well. And epic fantasy, for example, I've had really good results advertising box sets at $0.99. So on a longer series, you box the first 3 books, put the box at $0.99, and just advertise the hell out of it on Facebook. and BookBub. And that's going to get a bunch of sales. You're not going to make a profit usually on those box set sales. You might, if the box set is on KU and you get a bunch of KU borrows, and since it's a long box set, you make your money back on KU reads. But if it's a long series, you're going to make your money back on the read through. So that's definitely a good strategy. Audio box sets work really well. So if you manage to, invest in audio, if you have the money to invest in audio yourself, keep the rights, then do a box set of your first 3 books in the series or of your whole trilogy. There's one epic fantasy author I know who still, like, his main source of income is like audio on a trilogy box set in epic fantasy. Because audio is interesting because, it's oftentimes you have credit subscriptions and readers are going to look for, if I can get 30 hours of audio for 1 credit, then I'm going to go for it. A lot of times, if you surrender your rights, if you sell your rights to companies, to audiobook producers like Podium, they're not necessarily going to do these box sets because it's not in their best interest. But if you keep the rights, you should definitely do that. So think box sets. Eventually, if you sell enough, think about translations. Think about all the ways you can decline your IP and make the most of it. Oftentimes, releasing a new form of IP is a great way not only to sell that new format, but also revive interest and awareness around that series.
Fantastic. And yeah, it's great because I just released an audiobook. I'm going through a foreign rights deal.
Nice.
It's funny because these things all seem very far off. And then it's amazing how quickly you get to that place where actually you do need to start thinking about those things. So yeah, learning about them in advance is exactly what everybody should be doing. Okay, well, this is the Rebel Author podcast. So tell everyone about a time you unleashed your inner rebel.
It's good you sent that one to me in advance because otherwise...
Yeah. Everyone says that.
Get it stuck. No, in a rebel, I think mostly a rebel when I travel. I hate being bundled in places with a bunch of other tourists, other people when I travel. So after 20 Books Vegas, I did a trip with my co-founder Emmanuel, and along that trip we went to Lake Powell, and we're thinking of doing a tour of Antelope Canyon. But then we saw the crowds and the fact that you have to book a tour and they give you photo spots and you're in that amazing canyon that's super high, super thin, but you have hundreds of people around you. And that was definitely not going to be a pleasurable experience. So I looked at the map and I saw that Lake Powell has a bunch of other canyons all around it. That's basically all there is in the area. So I did a bit of research and I found another canyon that was much harder to access. But yeah, we rented a boat. We rented 2 kayaks. We put the kayaks in the boat. We beached the boat. We took the kayaks into the canyon. We beached the kayaks, and then we walked into this canyon called Labyrinth Canyon. We didn't see anyone during the whole day. And we were alone in that canyon, which is kind of the experience I wanted.
Is that where you got the amazing photos from?
Part of the amazing photos are from there.
Yeah. Oh wow, they were amazing. They were literally amazing. I was just like, how do these places exist? They're phenomenal. Yeah, I love that you did that. That is a rebellion to go against the tourist majority. Okay, fantastic. Tell everyone where they can find out more about you, your book, your courses, services, anything else that you would like to add.
Sure. So you can find me on Reedsy. That's reedsy.com. Definitely check out the website, the blog, the free courses we have on there, and all the free advice we have on there. For more free advice, you can search for how to market a book on any retailer. Thanks to the SEO and imaginative title, you should find it pretty quickly. So definitely download that for free on any retailer. And if you want to contact me personally for anything, again, I don't really run ads for authors anymore, but I can make recommendations for other people. Drop me a line, ricardo@reedsy.com. Email is what I check the most often. So always happy to answer any questions there.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been fantastic. And of course, thank you to all of the show's listeners and the show's patrons. If you would like to get early access to all of the episodes, then you can do so by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. I'm Sasha Black. You are listening to Ricardo Fayet, and this was the Rebel Author Podcast. Next week, I'm going to be joined by Amy Woods, and we're going to be talking all about how you can do content marketing to promote your books and how you can repurpose that content for maximum effect. So join me next week for that. Don't forget to tune in and subscribe on your podcatcher. And when you have a moment, please leave a review.